I'm calling this meeting of the Town of Silver City Council to order. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. We'll begin with item number 2, which is changes to the agenda. Do any of the councilors want to make changes to the agenda? Okay. Then the next item is that needs addressing is the council comments, and we'll begin with Councilor Bedston.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank everyone for your emails regarding recycling and other ordinances that are on tonight's current agenda. And I just wanted to let you know that I am listening, I am reading, but it's very difficult for me to respond at the moment due to my finger issue, and that the fact that I'm still trying to heal from broken fingers. I just don't type very well, and would not want someone to think that I'm saying something that I'm not, which is happening a lot of work right now. So I just wanted to say I am listening and I am reading and looking at what you're sending me. And I also want to remind folks that if a council member votes for a notice of intent, that is to move it to the discussion phase. It does not mean it is passed. I just want to remind folks that there's a process that we follow here. It's like a hearing of what it is, and then allows the public to comment. So it doesn't mean it's a done deal. It doesn't mean that it's done and over with. There's still another vote to come. So just remember that a notice of intent, whether it's a superseding notice of intent or a regular notice of intent, it just, the vote is to move it to discussion so that there can be input from the community, because I think that's really important for folks to be able to be heard. So I just wanted to remind folks of that. And I thought the 4th of July was quite wonderful, and I want to thank all of our veterans, including the mayor and Councilor Ray and everyone that's in the room and who's viewing. Councilor Ray, thank you for, I saw you in the honor guard, in the Veterans Honor Guard, and Color Guard, and I really appreciate that. And Mayor Ladner, I loved your signs on your entry. I liked the Tosco Moss and everything else about it. So, and the last thing I wanted to mention is coming up in several weeks is something called the Resolutions Committee for the New Mexico Municipal League. And the Resolutions Committee is where we take what is going on at the Policy Committee, which many of us attended, and we take all those policies and we decide as it's a representative group of people from different committees. I don't really understand the process for selection, but I just know that there's some sort of thing that the committee members do. Not members, but the committee chairs do. And we try to get folks from across the state, the league staff do. But what we do is we then discuss about the resolutions that we, as the municipal league, that supports our municipalities, the 107 that we have in the state, what it is that we need to do to make all of our citizens' lives better and to make our lives in the municipality a little better, because we do have an issue with the state trying to take our money away, especially with like the hold harmless. So that's coming up in a couple weeks, and I just wanted to let everyone know that, don't know how it happened, but Mr. Brown has been selected to be on it, and he will be attending. I will be as well, and due to some unfortunate circumstances, the president-elect will be unable to attend, so I will be running the meeting. So it's actually chairing the meeting, so it's actually a really good position for Silver City to be in, because that discussion, our concerns are heard, and make sure that everybody's heard, just like we make sure that all of you are heard. So I just wanted to let you know that that process for the Municipal League and how it affects our municipality is coming to the next step, and there's further steps that continue with the Resolutions Committee at the annual meeting. So thank you very much, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Common?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention that I continue to be concerned about the way people drive downtown. Anyone who goes downtown, especially on Saturday morning, knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's people making U-turns in the middle of the street or just walking out in front of cars. I mean, it's out of hand, and someone's going to end up injured eventually. So we could all be a little bit more aware when we're on Bullard and Broadway that we are downtown and there are pedestrians and we need to be a little bit safer. That being said, I know you have a lot of things going on, Chief Portillo, but there is at least one officer who does not understand stopping at the four-way stop on 6th and Bullard. Every Saturday morning, I watch him run that stop sign. I'm not fast enough to get the plate to know which officer it is, but there is one. So I know that there's a business owner on that corner who is willing to have you come and sit in her business and watch and see which one it is. And it's at the same time every week, so it's got to be the same guy. So if you could just kind of mention to him that people are noticing it and are complaining, not just the counselor, but people are complaining to me too. So, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to tell the people that have sent us emails and sent me emails, I do keep them, and I appreciate that, especially from all of them, so the ones that are against it, the ones that are for it. So don't think that I don't read them, I do, and I take them into heart. Now, on the brighter side of things, there has been a couple of people up at the Capilla, and I mentioned to Mr. Brown, and I wanted to talk to him, and I said that this is city property and you are not allowed to have your ATVs here. And so they took it to heart, and thanks for letting the police department know, and so far they haven't done it. And I want to make sure that everything is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Amon Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo that July 4th was really fun. And it was a big party down on Gough Street. It was a fabulous parade. And then I got to staff the popcorn machine at the museum for the ice cream social. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the volunteers. It's a huge amount of work to put together such a celebration. And most of the folks are volunteers. And it's just a great reflection on the civic-minded and encouraging population we have. So thank you. And speaking of volunteers, I want to let everyone know that on August 4th is the District 2 Territorial Charter Volunteer Day. And what we're going to do in District 2 is a pilot of setting up what's called a play street in District 2. So stay tuned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other council members want to make any additional comments? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move right along to item number 6, approval of the minutes of the June 26, 2018 regular meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Amon Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of the Town of Center City of June 26, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Badston?
Thank you, Mayor. I second the motion as stated.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public input. Quite a few people signed up for public input, and it looks like a lot of them had to do with the NOI that we'll be addressing tonight. So for those who wish to speak to that, I'll ask you to hold your comments, either pro or con, to when we get to that agenda item. And I will give everybody a chance to give public input. We'll follow the same format that the last time we did it when we were having the NOI discussion. Kenneth Sexton, I can't quite read what your subject matter was. Was it the NOI?
Yes.
Okay. And Michael Mazzelli was recycling?
Yep. Good evening, Michael Malizzi. Cool. Michael Malozzi. I'm new to the city, and it's my first time coming to the town council meeting, so thank you. I'd like to talk about the recycling issue we just experienced, and I had a meeting with Mr. Brown in regards to that, and we've, discussed at length what his actions were, and he's going to go over what he has been able to arrange. But also, part of our discussion that I wanted to kind of get on record and pass through the council was that the information that came out during this kind of faux pas with recycling wasn't coming from the town directly. It was coming through the paper, off the radio, and a lot of the citizenship didn't get any message from the town direct and made up the story in the background. So, whereas the town was dealing with a place to take it because the rest of the locations that accept recycling of our magnitude weren't accepting it because of other political and economic reasons. The town never mentioned anything about that. It just came out that we were going to stop doing it, and it sounded like it was a money reason, that we couldn't afford it or weren't charging enough, and so people were making up how to solve the problem. Mr. Brown might go into why some of the citizens were contacting recycling companies and trying to find out if they were still accepting it, and the companies were stating that they were, but they were only accepting it for personal, if I wanted to take my recycling directly to El Paso, Las Cruces, Albuquerque, Tucson, wherever I wanted to go, I could take my stuff there, but they weren't accepting the towns, which was confusing the message. So again, I think the town needs to be a little bit more forward with information, especially something of this importance to a lot of the people that live here. The best avenue that I see to get that message out is on the website, which, if you look at, hasn't been updated probably since 2011. And there's information there that says we still accept glass, which we don't. Information that can be disseminated as quickly as just a keystroke on a computer, and we can actually get the proper information out. We can also put up some, PSAs on how to clean your recycling properly, so that the companies that do take our recycling don't turn it away or give us the lower rate, and maybe explain a little bit more on how recycling works and the benefits that the town is getting from recycling and diverting most of our, or half of our 1/3 of our stream into recycling as opposed to the landfill. Trying to describe this. So that's about all I have, and then Mr. Brown will probably elaborate.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is reports. Mr. Brown?
Just continue with recycling. First of all, I want to apologize to council and the community. When that article came out, I was leaving on vacation, and I had just been told that by the last recycler that they weren't going to take it. So that was pretty much, I really should have just not said anything until I had more information, and confused the situation. But up until that point, up until actually Thursday, all the recycling companies that take recycling that we have access to, which would be Tucson, Albuquerque, and El Paso, had continued to tell the Solid Waste Authority that no, they would not take recycling, single stream recycling at all, that they were continuing to stockpile it. And in fact, the city of Albuquerque and Freedman, both in Albuquerque, got citations because of the amount of material that they had stockpiled, and it was starting to become littered. I worked with the Solid Waste Authority. We negotiated with Freedman out of El Paso. First, originally, they told us that they wouldn't accept anything from us because they weren't taking on any new customers. Well, we worked with them, and originally, when we started single-stream recycling, we were taking it to El Paso. So they realized we were a customer. So that broke that barrier, so they were willing to at least talk to us. By the end of the day Friday morning, we ended up reaching a deal that they would accept our recycling, single-stream recycling, for $25 a ton. So we have two options: send it over the scale at the landfill for $46 a ton, or send it to Friedman for $25 a ton as single stream. They did say that they've got some potentially new markets that they can start sending some of their recycling to. And in 6 months, they're willing to sit down and renegotiate that rate. Hopefully, it'll be down. Things will work out and be beneficial, and the cost will go down. But as of now, it's $25 a ton. And so, there's a lot of volatility out there because the markets are very few and far between. And through my conversations with the public, I did learn that we've got a lot of education to do out there. First of all, we really do need to update our website. And if you give me the direction to move forward with the single stream, the rest of this week and next week, we're going to try to do some PSA blasts to make sure that everybody knows we're continuing to accept the recycling, single stream recycling. But in the future, we do need to do a lot more education, because one of the biggest problems, especially like plastics and some of our cardboard, is that it's dirty. And so we've got to teach people that they've got to rinse out a lot of their plastics before they put it in the recycling and stuff like that. So to make it more valuable to the recycling companies and make it more beneficial for us to continue to recycle and continuing the program. But when it comes down to it, I did a cost-benefit analysis, and if we've got three scenarios. One is to eliminate recycling completely, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. Number two was to just accept corrugated cardboard, which is the only market that is strong out there. And that still would cost us some money, because everything that used to be single stream would have to go over the scales at $46 a ton, so there would be an additional cost. And the cost would come out to about $1.20 per account per month increase. And then if we go with the single stream, which would be an added cost on top of our recycling contract, based on last year's recycling single stream, it would cost us 90 cents a month per account per month. So, I would recommend that we go forward with single stream, continue the program as it's going right now. And because the final budget is coming up at our next council meeting, I can do an increase to landfill costs of 90 cents per customer per month, if that's okay with you.
Does the council have any questions? And I would say that we're not going to vote because it's not on the agenda, but you can make your thoughts known to Mr. Brown. Who would like to go first? Councilor Besta?
So I just want to make sure that the public knows, because I think this is a decision that you make as the town manager, correct? With guidance
It's a
from
decision
council.
that, because the way that the ordinance is written, is that
Yes.
I make the recommendation at budget time.
Right.
And usually it's during the preliminary budget or final budget, and we
Maybe
have
the final budget.
final budget coming up. So I just want to hear your thoughts, and based on your thoughts, I will come back with
Options.
options at the next meeting.
So I just want to be clear, because we always say it's going to cost us, but I want to make sure that the customer, that our account holders know that it costs them.
Then, yes.
So the option is nothing, that we just don't take anything anymore, which I think most people because we've really increased the recycling, that would be something. I mean, I know I've been a big proponent, as you well know. I've been the one that's been, for years saying we need to do this, we need to do this. So, I think that it's hard for me right now to not put it into the single stream, and to I've already made steps to reduce my use of plastics, which will continue despite what's going, whatever decision is made when we do the final budget. But I'd also say that I think people need to understand that this clean corrugated cardboard would be $1.20 extra for their account, and single stream at this time seems to be 90 cents increase to their account. So yes, I favor doing the single stream, but I also think that we have to realize that Friedman said in 6 months we'll renegotiate. So what happens if those where they hope to sell to doesn't come to fruition? We need to make sure that folks understand that this may not be the solution that we're all seeking. And I think also, I think if we do this education, we need to start educating, and once that decision is made, rapidly on cleaning the plastics, how to, which plastics are going to go, cleaning tin cans, cleaning out, anything that that fits into the recycling things. So, like, don't use pizza cartons because they're contaminated already because they've got the grease all over from the pizza. And that we really do mean that those are not recyclable. But I guess when it comes right down to it, I think we have to do that, and we have to also, I think it behooves us to educate the public that this is not in some ways it's a crisis that we're making, in some ways it's not, but we need to make sure that folks know that I don't see a pathway because of the toxicity of dealing with plastics that the town could ever take this on in terms of the environmental impact that could occur in Grant County if we were to somehow. I know people wanted us to do that because I've gotten emails about it, but they don't understand that the processing of plastics is incredibly toxic, not only to people doing it, but also to the environment around you. So I think that there needs to be a little bit more explanation, as been suggested through the public input, that we actually explain what recycling is all about, what it does do, and how, while we've been very good in this town about doing recycling, we need to be even better in the future, and hope that the markets open up again. So those are my comments. So thank you.
Any other council comments? Councilor Emmett Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the citizens who really wanted to find solutions. I tried to send out, in response to many of the inquiries I got, some industry links that were very current that talked about this situation, which is not that the town decided not to recycle, but rather that we have a national and international market shift where recycling is not being able to be exported to the major buyer anymore. By their mandate, they're not going to take it anymore. 6 weeks ago, the El Paso newspaper published an article on the Friedman Recycling LLC there in El Paso with pictures saying that they were essentially stockpiling because their markets had really fallen through. So if Mr. Friedman, bless him, is finding other alternatives, my guess is that they will still have a huge amount of material that there's going to be continuing to stockpile, because the other markets were minuscule compared in the western states to the market from China. So I hope that people realize that the decision to really review our recycling wasn't because we were not supportive. We are crazy supportive. It's just that it was huge issues outside of our local control. And I want to recognize, Mr. Brown, I hope that we recognize this is a potential, possibly short-term recycling solution. because we do not know how the market is going to expand or contract.
Any other comments? Councilor Connell?
I too would support the 90% increase per account for the single stream to continue at this point. I think that's overwhelmingly would be supported by the people that have reached out to me too, so I agree with you. Something I wanted to mention though was listening to Mr. Malozzi, I hope I got your name right. You had a lot of really good points about our ways of communicating. And one of the things that I noticed, I'm very involved in social media, and I do pay attention to what people are saying about the town, and sometimes I respond and sometimes I don't. One of the things that happened was that an employee of the Solid Waste Authority went on and started giving opinions and their facts. And I know that that person isn't our employee, so there's not really anything we could do about it necessarily. But because that person went on and was like, oh, well, they found somebody to buy it after all. And I mean, they kind of made it even worse. The issue was a bigger problem. So in the future, you know, if we could possibly try to get all the information out at once before an employee who probably shouldn't have been saying things anyway start saying stuff, that might be really helpful. And also, I too would support updating our website a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? I too want to thank you, Mr. Brown, for all the work that you've put in here, because our community has really bought into single stream, and thank you for all the work that you did. But I think the educational part is very important, because single stream recycling kind of gives you a false sense of security. You know, you can go out and buy a 36-pack of plastic water bottles, and then you just throw them away, right? And so somebody else will take care of the problem. But I think part of the education needs to be how we can conserve what we have rather than just using up our natural resources. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about getting away from generating electricity with fossil fuels. But we use a lot of fossil fuels for making plastic bottles and plastic whatever. So I think part of the education needs to, and we need to go to the school level and try to get the schools to participate with us. We need to try and conserve our resources, and I would like to see our educational program focus on that as well. Anything else, Mr. Brown?
That's it.
Okay. Do you have any other reports?
I think James mentioned to you about last council meeting about sort of the budget where we've ended up in very good shape. I just wanted to make sure, I'm really looking at 32nd Street to do an overlay on that street, and I would really like to use a portion of that money to do that overlay this year. It have to be all local money, and we do have the money. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend in the final budget that we move that money over into a fund so that we can do that. It's reserved for that project only, okay? So I'll bring that. If you don't agree with it at the next meeting, then that's fine, but I just want to give you the heads up.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next item on the agenda that requires action is new business. First item is 11A. The approval/disapproval of notice of intent, ordinance number 1268, an ordinance proposed in various amendments to the municipal code regarding boards and committees of the town. And this is Council Amon Smith, NOI.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me speak a little bit to the background about this. As I've noted in my councilor comments, we have a lot of citizen volunteers in our community, and the town of Silver City, over time, has developed a variety of citizen volunteer participation structures for people to be formally involved in our town government. One of the things I know is that when citizens are willing to volunteer for our town government, they want to know that their ideas, opinion, expertise, information, and networks to other community members that they bring are useful and valuable and valued. They want that participation to mean something. And I've talked to a number of volunteers here. These citizen volunteers, to my experience, are motivated to use that unique knowledge, skills, and abilities to provide support and help to the town of Silver City departments or to work on specific projects that will be useful. So this NOI 1268 stems in part from my own service on a variety of these volunteer groups before I became a counselor, and from talking with people who are currently volunteering. The work of this NOI and supporting documents that will be involved also come somewhat from my own professional background. As some of you know, I used to be a mid-level manager in a corporation, and one of the things I did was establish a variety of different work groups and group processes as my role as the manager. And then when I went off and became a researcher and an academic and a consultant, that was an area of expertise. So I consulted with entities like Red Hat, which is a software company, and actually with IBM and various places on groups and group structures and how to help groups work better. So this NOI here is in response to talking with a variety of volunteers and observing how these entities have worked. And I realized that often citizen volunteers have made it clear to me that they would like more clarity about what they're supposed to be doing and maybe not doing, supposed to not be doing, when they sit on a town group, committee, commission, or task force. And I also realized when I went back and read through all of the ordinances that put these structures in place, that what might have been a really good idea at the time, maybe 15, 20 years ago, now it's not such a good idea. So it's time to change that and make them all good ideas. So let me tell you about the fundamental changes that are included in this NOI 1268. One of them is we took out this provision that permits a person who is appointed to an advisory group or commission to appeal their removal if they are absent for more than 3 consecutive times. Well, in industry, we would call that performance review and consequences. We took that out because people serve at the pleasure of the mayor. And so if they feel like they have, for some reason, a contractual right to a position, they're actually negating the mayor's prerogative. And we don't want to set that up. The next global change changes this written in stone requirement of monthly meetings. I know that I have been to meetings where we did the agenda and we got out in 10 minutes. We were meeting because we felt like we had to. Let's take away people feeling like they have to meet every month. It can be really distressing to be compelled to show up at a monthly meeting when there's not really any projects or tasks. And that will make people sometimes discouraged and uninterested. So what we did was we just changed a requirement to quarterly meetings. We kept a requirement because the research on groups showed that if you have some sort of consistent meetings, you have greater cohesion in the group. But maybe monthly is too much. Maybe monthly is perfect. When we say that they must have a quarterly meeting, that doesn't mean that if the department director or designee of the town manager and the group think that they need to meet monthly, they can. But they don't have to if they don't really have any agenda items or tasks to do. So that's why we're doing that. Also, the language reduces the size of most groups to a more realistic and effective size of 5 voting members and 2 ex officio members. Decades of research have said that between 5 and 7 is the proper number for working groups. So that's what we set in. And the NOI further clarifies that appointed ex officio members, whether from the town council or another entity, aren't entitled to vote. They're there to be a liaison and to give information and advice, but they're not voting. I have to say that I used the cemetery language a lot because I thought it was the best written of all of the ones that were in there. We've removed the term advisory board when it applies to volunteer groups for the town departments, and we've replaced it with the term community advisory group. This stems from 2 reasons. One is that there's a common misunderstanding when a person hears the word board. They think, oh, board of directors. That's not so. None of the citizen volunteer advisory entities associated with town governments are government bodies. They don't govern that department or that. They are advisory. Their role is to provide information, do analysis, bring in input, insight, talk to other people in the community, and be generally a community resource for the designee of the town manager or the department head. The other reason was because when we looked at some of the most current language in accrediting bodies for professional organizations, that seems to be what they use. They say that they want to see community advisory groups that are active advising, so we just used that. We deleted the requirements for Parks and Rec Board because we haven't had one forever, and for Golf Course Board because we don't really manage the golf course anymore. So it seemed reasonable to take those out. And then the last change, it was a change to the way the Incentive Review Committee language read. That's a committee that only is stood up and only meets when there's an application for a project participation agreement from some outside entity that wants to examine potential incentives from the town. It's been years since one of those was submitted. The last Incentive Review Committee did a really good job of setting up decision criteria and processes. And so in the absence of any project application, there's no reason to have a standing committee. Again, people don't have anything to do. So in summary, my hope is that the changes reflected in this NOI and other supporting documents that the town and I will work on will make those of you who volunteer happier, will make your volunteering easier, more clear, and more satisfying. If you're generous with your time and talents and wanting to help the town, let's make it easier for you to do so. And with that...
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council?
Well, let me motion. Let me make a motion.
Okay,
and we
go
can
ahead.
discuss. With that, I move to approve notice of intent of ordinance number 1268, an ordinance proposing various amendments to the municipal code regarding boards and committees of the town.
Thank you. I wasn't asking for discussion, I was asking for questions.
Oh, sorry. Well,
It's okay. It's okay, let's proceed. We have a motion, do we have a second? Councilor Ray.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second it as read.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Now, do we have any discussion? Councilor Kano?
Actually, just by the time we vote on the next one, if we could remove the second museum in the second sentence under section 30-24.
Oh, did I miss that?
Just so it's nice and clean. Yeah, it says Museum Community Advisory Group Museum. It just needs to, that way. Thanks.
Any other?
Actually, I was going to say, and thank you for your work on this. I know the cemetery board has been hoping to see us move to quarterly meetings at some point.
Your group is actually, it sounds like it's a very effective group. Maybe you don't need to meet monthly. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilor Kano?
That's it.
Any other discussion?
Thank you. Very well done.
Thank you, Councilor Amy Smith, for all of your work on this.
All right.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item is 11B, the approval/disapproval of superseding notice of intent, ordinance number 1269, and ordinance amending section 12-7-9 through 12-7-9-10, off-highway motor vehicles, definitions, etc., of the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Code adopted as the Silver City Traffic Ordinance in Chapter 50, Section 50-1 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico. Would our town attorney give us a brief explanation of what a superseding notice of intent is?
Okay, a few weeks ago, the council passed an NOI informing the public of the matter to be discussed and the matter to be eventually voted on as an ordinance. When normally we would have, or the council would have voted on the NOI tonight, but there have been a significant number of material changes to the original NOI. And when you change the original NOI to such an extent that what you're voting on is not close to the same as what originally was proposed, you have to re-notify the public and say, there's been some changes made, and we're not voting on the ordinance tonight because the NOI itself has been modified to a material extent. So, by doing and that would have been under old business. So, the new NOI is, so we keep the same number and it's the same subject, but it is now superseding the old NOI. The old NOI that was voted on several weeks ago no longer exists. It's being replaced with the NOI that you have in front of you tonight. If you vote in favor of it, that NOI will be the basis for the ordinance that you eventually will vote on.
Thank you very much. This is sponsored by Councilor Ray. Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, there are changes in format and number that were done by the attorney to make it easier for the code company to integrate the amendments into the existing code. Second, a number of substantial changes have been made to the original NOI in response to the public input that I have received. Those changes include the following. Under definitions, the following changes were made. No longer are non-highway tires permitted on ROVs operated within the town. There is now a requirement for directional signals. The definition of town streets has been modified to exclude alleys, trails, pathways, and only include paved roadways. Under the operation of ROVs on town streets, there is now language that states, ROVs as described herein shall not be operated on town trails, open spaces, riparian zones, stream beds, or parks. Further, there is now language that states that all ATVs and other unpermitted off-highway motor vehicles shall not be operated within the town limits. Finally, the existing penalty assessments for traffic violations by operators of ROVs have been increased. And it's going to be the same thing as the newest NOI here. Mr. Skevin, our town attorney, and I worked on it, and we came to a conclusion, and it was painstaking for both of us. And I agreed with Mr. Skevin in changing some of the language. Although I did want to change some of the language, but we wanted to make it as safe as possible for the people to use, for the safest way for anybody that has a side-by-side to be operated on the streets of Silver City. Again, this NOI will not have anybody under 18 operated. It'll have to be over 18 to operate it. You do have to have an on-road and off-road sticker. You do have to have a horn. You do have to have signal lights. You do have to have street tires. You do have to have backup lights. This is the safety harness. If somebody is under 18 and they're a passenger, they have to have a helmet. All drivers, regardless of the age, from 18 on up, have to wear eye apparatus. Let's see. I hope I'm not missing something. Oh yes, we do have to have insurance. That is a must. You have to have insurance, and you have to have mirrors also. and of course, we all have breaks. I don't know what else to add to it. I'm just trying to make it safe for, we can please everybody. And is there any questions from the council? I'll try to answer them the best as I can, or from the public,
Any questions, not the public yet, any questions from the council?
Actually, I...
Council
I
Connor?
just have one of the things that we've talked about a few times, and I know it was mentioned at the council meeting and the public meetings, was having kind of a sunset clause in here that we would come back after a year or two to check and see if it worked, and if not, we would...
we can do that. We can do that. If it's reviewable, let's give it 2 years, reviewable within 2 years. And one thing also that I forgot to mention also, that the operation, if it should pass, the operations will be from 6 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night. Nobody, if somebody's operating before 6, they can get a ticket. Anybody after 10 p.m., they can get a ticket. And we also increased the fines for violations.
Any other questions from the council? Councilor Newman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Ray, I don't know if you saw, I sent you, without talking with you, but I sent you a note that had a list of a variety of points that I was concerned about. And I don't know if you received it or not, because I sent it to you via email, and I also sent it to our attorney. So if you didn't receive it, I really wish that you had, because I had a bunch of questions on it. But here's a couple, and I'll just post them here. One is that I want to say that the NOI, I don't think really meets the spirit of the state legislation of SB 270, sponsored by Senator Stephen Neville. When he was pushing this, Senator Neville never implied that his legislation was meant to result in ROVs essentially becoming a different kind of vehicle in a town. In fact, what he said in public was, on the floor, this is intended for farmers who might be on an ATV and need to travel on a paved road to get to their fields down the road without being cited. We don't want to penalize people carrying out their daily jobs and duties. We want to make sure people have freedom to get their jobs done. So the intent of it being for agricultural work doesn't apply here. The governor also, when she signed it, said that I want to be clear that the intent of this bill is not to replace or substitute vehicle usage for day-to-day transportation. And went on to warn and say, it shouldn't be, local governments should use any authority sparingly and only after careful consideration of the needs and the risks associated with OHV work use.
Councilor Newman Smith, so your question was, did he receive that?
Right. Did you receive my note?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good, thank you.
Continue if you want to.
Thank you so much. So then you know that I had concerns about the original use, about actual evidence for ROVs to benefit the town, rather than a portion of folks who perhaps already own them. And a big concern, which is that these are ROVs, by their manufacturing requirements, are not considered motor vehicles, and so don't go through the same regulatory stuff. For example, there's no license plate on them. What there is a sticker about this big.
No, they're big.
All right, how big are they? That big? Are they about this big? Because that would be helpful. Maybe about half of that.
About that type.
Okay. But it's not a regular license plate.
No.
Yeah, so that, I think that might make it awkward for law enforcement. But you're saying that maybe law enforcement could see it.
You have to, they show it, they tell you where to put it, so it'll be easier for the law enforcement
I saw
to
the diagrams of the MPD.
Let's save our discussions for discussion. We're just in the question.
So, question about that. So another point, which we should discuss during discussion, is how are we going to make it clear to the populace about what a town street is and what a state highway is? Because state highways are still, you can't drive on them, so we need to work out that implementation. And then I have concerns about enforcement and cost of enforcement. Our interim chief, Portillo, adamantly stated he's against this because of concerns of enforcement.
Again,
And so, I'm just listening, I'm listening to the question. And then the last one is, how is this ordinance going to assure revenue neutrality? In other words, that it's not going to cost the town more to have it than we already have. So I know that's a bunch, there's about 5 things, but they're important to get out.
thank you, Councilmember Smith. Any other questions for Councilor Ray? Councilor Besson?
So my questions also are similar, but I'm not going to repeat some of the things that Councilor Amos said, but I do have a question about the time from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. when currently the way it's written, and I think it's up for discussion, is that I think they need to have at least one headlight of sufficient candle power and at least one tail light. And the concern's been brought to me that, when it's really dark here, and, we don't do a lot of street lighting here because we like the dark skies. The question I have is, are people going to mistake an ROV that may be next to them for a motorcycle? And that would be something that I think that I understand, but I'm just saying motorcycles are also on the highway and people don't see those and they don't see bicyclists and vice versa. Nobody sees anybody else because they're looking at certain things. So just a question. I do want to thank you for 12-7-9.2 on that the ROVs would not be operated in town trails, open spaces. I appreciate that greatly because that was a major concern. And I also wanted to mention that I appreciate greatly something that I wanted you to mention was in 12-7-9.9, number 12, that the operation of ROV within town limits shall obey all motor vehicle traffic laws. So I think that the wording that you and the attorney came together with is much more plain spoken and much more clear. So, but I do have those additional questions about the time and about whether or not there may be a mistake. And I don't know if our chief has any comments on that, of people perceiving it not to be a wider body vehicle than a motorcycle. Just a question.
Councilor Ray, how do you answer that question?
First of all, let me go back to the lights. Okay, the lights. These side-by-sides, there are apparatuses that you can put on the top. And on the top of string of lights, which are bright, or you can put them in the front, which are real bright. They also have the lights. They have a high beam and a low beam, and also you have reflectors on the sides.
Okay, that's good information.
Yes, they do. Your second question, the last one was
Well, the first one was on the time.
the time.
Why 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.? Why not like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which other municipalities have done?
I'm gonna get off the subject real quick. I called some of the municipalities that allowed them throughout the state, and they have no issues whatsoever, none whatsoever. As a matter of fact, someone told me that they had expected more side-by-sides, but and so far they haven't done it. Now, Farmington has a state road. And as a matter of fact, they got I think they got 2 state roads.
They do.
And what they did is that they allowed it to go in a straight line across.
Yeah.
And they said that they are obeying them. They are obeying them and all that. Here we can do the same thing. We can go in a straight line to go from one place to another place. Now, get back to your last question, was, that time.
Yeah.
The time could be flexible. The time could be very, very flexible. I would, I would like to see it really, maybe from 7 to 10. Maybe from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. No later than 10 o'clock at night. No later. And some people aren't even going to use them at 10 o'clock. You'll get very few people to use them at 10 o'clock. But just to give them a little bit of leeway, I guess, help us out. But I'm going to go at 7, yes. No later and no earlier than 7. And the penalties they're kind of steep.
Any other questions?
May I make one comment before you?
Councilman,
I know that I ask a lot of hard questions, but Counselor, I want to say, I know you worked a lot on this, and I very much appreciate the changes that you made. So just forgive me for being, the way I am.
It's like I said before, I have no real feelings. I don't, because I take this all into consideration. And these guys out here, they're the ones that helped me. Because I went around to a bunch of these guys out there and I asked them, what do you think? Well, let's try it this way. So it's not just me. It was these guys that are here today that helped me set this up here. And I understand that we're going to get pros and cons, just like anything else. Now, we're shooting to see if it will bring in some revenues. And I think it will. What? I don't know. But we can always try. And even if we don't get anything, we still succeeded because we tried to bring something in here.
thank you, Councilor Gray. I have a question for Mr. Scarborough, and I remember at one point when this came up last year or so that there was discussion about if there's a liability with the town or not. I don't have a feel for that. What's your legal? Yes.
We checked with insurance when it came up the first time, and they said there was no added liability issues.
But that's not what he's asking.
Mr. Scarborough?
That has to, the question is whether, now this is for civil liability of a driver. That's the first instance. It's not really an insurance question. The issue is if you have a manufacturer that tells you that we designed the vehicle as the way it is, and it was not designed to be used on a city street. They say that the manufacturer's warranties, the manufacturer in his first disclaimer says, this is not designed to be a motor vehicle to be used on streets. So the issue is, let's say someone gets in an accident with an ROV in town and hurts somebody. The first thing that the plaintiff's lawyer is going to say, wait a minute, you're driving a vehicle that says specifically in the paperwork that you got when you bought it that it's not to be used on a city street. And you ran my client over with a vehicle that shouldn't have been on a city street. The manufacturer said it wasn't designed for that. I think that in that situation, you as the ROV driver is going to be in a heap of trouble, liability-wise. But that's private, and we don't get involved in private liability issues. But the next question is, could somebody allege that, town, you knew that this vehicle was not designed for city streets, yet you passed a law allowing them? What is the negligence of the town? Are you complicit with the use of the vehicle in a manner that was not intended by the manufacturer? That's the legal issue that I brought up a year and a half ago when we first discussed it. This whole thing is new. So there's no case law on what's going to happen, whether a town is going to be charged for allowing a vehicle that wasn't supposed to be used in town to use it within town. Is the town going to be named? It doesn't matter if the insurance covers us or not. What matters is the town going to be named as complicit with the driver of the ROV that ran somebody over. And maybe this person wouldn't have been killed had there been different brakes or a differential on the rear wheels or a bumper or something. So was the issue that has not come up yet is a local governing body. Can a local governing body be charged as being complicit by knowing that a vehicle is not designed for city streets, by passing a law permitting them on a city street? I don't know the answer, but it's my obligation to be imaginative on what things may or may not happen down the road. There's no cases on this in New Mexico. We haven't had this issue come. Maybe it'll never come. But in considering what you're doing, is that is a risk. It's a very small risk, probably, but I had to bring it to your attention. I brought it to everybody, to Councilor Ray and everybody else, their attention 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. I'm mentioning it again. It seems like there's a lot of jurisdictions that are passing ordinances like this, and I'll tell you that the ordinances that I've looked at from other places around the state, this is probably the most comprehensive and most safety-oriented ordinance that Councilor Ray has produced. But there's still that issue of liability, making a law that says you can do something that the manufacturer himself says don't do. I don't know the answer.
Thank you. Now it's time for public input. The city has an ordinance for public input that gives each person a 5-minute limit for their public input. It also, part of the ordinance is that once the topic's been addressed by some people, then you don't readdress it. There's also, part of the ordinance is that there's a 20-minute time limit. So as I'm looking around, I see a lot of people who want to give input. So it's obvious that if everybody gave 5-minute input, then not everybody would get a chance to do that. So I know all of you have put in a lot of effort to get here tonight so that your voice can be heard. And I want to make sure that your voice is heard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the sign-up sheet and call those who signed up a chance. And then when we're done, then I know some people came in toward the end, and there was a line of people that wanted to sign up, but we had to start the meeting, so I had to get the sheet. So then I'll give a chance to those who didn't get a chance to sign up, a chance to speak. So what I'm going to do is to ask you, when you come up, to try to keep your remarks brief so that we can give everybody a chance to give some public input, okay? You were getting ready to make a comment.
Yes, of course, that's point of clarification. Also in that ordinance, it says that our public input, if someone has spoken about something within the last 30 days, that they're not supposed to speak on it again. The reason I'm mentioning that is if we have people who are new and haven't spoken yet, can we please let them speak first before we hear the same people again?
I can do that, but again, I want everybody to have a chance to give input. And if we go beyond the 20 minutes, we're going to go beyond the 20 minutes, because I want to respect your coming here tonight for us to be heard. Is that okay with you, Councilor Connell? Councilor Baston?
Just a quick question, actually request that we maybe hold a short break. 5 minutes and then come back, because I think we want to make sure we have enough time for everybody, and I don't want to, break it. So I move for a short break, 5 minutes.
And we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll take a short break. I'll call us back to order. Some of these names, I can't quite read, so I might call a first name or a last name, depending on what I can read. But first to sign up was, and again, help us out by keeping your comments to the point and as short as possible, was Kenneth Sexton. And I turned the microphone on and speak into the microphone, please.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Kenneth Sexton. I work in Silver City, live in Silver City. I'm going to talk about a new topic I came across. Actually, the question had come up at the last meeting, actually last 2 meetings on this subject. But the question was, can ROVs drive on state roads or U.S. highways if the ordinance is passed? And if you don't ask for permission, the answer is no. But there's a formal 2-page policy published by the New Mexico Department of Transportation, and they list the formal requirements that should be included or amended to the ordinance. But the town would produce a request and submit it to Santa Fe, the New Mexico Department of Transportation Commission. So there is a procedure. They're very specific. There's 9 requirements, and if you satisfy all of them, then the commission, following the Department of Transportation recommendation, can allow segments of state roads and even U.S. highways to connect recreational areas that have been identified by the town and recognized by the state. So the purpose of the original law, one of the purposes was to increase tourism, to develop tourism, ecotourism, to allow state roads, highways to connect recreational vehicles. And the primary, if the request is if permission is given by the commission to the town, they have to first demonstrate, that's one of the 9 requirements, that there is a recreational aspect in the area, and the roads would help the town and connect the recreational areas. So this was a surprise to me. Some of the conditions, if you do want to use the road, and I'm going to be brief here, I'm not going to go through all 9 requirements, but the town must demonstrate and document that the community and law enforcement support for the route designation. And if there is a U.S. highway involved, the state or the town may have to go to the Federal Highway Administration to get permission and then satisfy any requirements they have. So I made copies of this. I'm going to give it to the town attorney, and hopefully you'll have distributed it to the council members and you can study this. But once, I think one of the concerns is once the ordinance is, if it's passed, there might be a desire to have to use the major roads in the town.
Thank you, Ken. Next is Trent Ball.
My name is Trent Ball. I'm a citizen and a local business owner. I want to compliment Ray on the changes to the proposal. I believe that the DOT change the tires will add a lot in terms of safety and stability to the vehicle. I'm also glad to see that we knocked off any trails and repairing areas that has gone to streets. I want to make sure that all the councilors understand that these vehicles will have to go to the DMV. They are inspected by a person at the DMV to make sure that they have horns, turn signals, and everything applies to the New Mexico code. I also want to let you guys know that I have currently on my machine street legal insurance that has my vehicle insured just like a passenger car through Levitt Insurance. So it is able to be done, and it is right here in town. One last thing, I truly, as a business person, as a person who moved here from Utah, I have a lot of friends, hundreds of them that recreate, and in Utah it's cold in the middle of winter. They want to come here, they want to stay in our hotels, they want to go to our restaurants, and I would like to help open that avenue to get these people here. I am for this bill, and I think it'll help town get people into town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trent. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. I want to speak tonight on behalf of Southwest New Mexico Audubon. I'm president of Audubon, and we're very grateful to Councilor Ray for addressing our concerns about using ROVs on the trails and in stream beds and riparian areas. That was a significant concern that all of our members had because of recent damage to the San Vicente Trail, and I commend you for making the ROV issue one where they could only be driven on paved streets, if that were the case if this ordinance passed. The second thing I wanted to address tonight was the fact that I am very heartened by how respectful the discussion has been on this issue, both at the previous council meeting and at Councilor Ray's public meeting. It was heartening to see that all the proponents and opponents of this ordinance spoke with a lot of respect to the other side. So I am really proud of Silver City in that regard, and think that the owners of the ROVs that have shown up for this meeting are certainly show themselves to be responsible drivers based on their actions, and so I feel quite confident that they're the leaders of the community, and I hope that they will take the opportunity, should this ordinance pass, to make sure that they extend that opportunity, that responsibility to other off-road drivers, particularly those that are on ATVs. As some of you mentioned before, that you have to do a good job of policing yourselves, but I hope you'll also police those that don't fall under this ordinance, that could be disobeying the ordinance and riding ATVs on city streets or on trails. Thank you.
Thank you. Rochelle Bergman?
Hello, I'm Rochelle Bergman. I'm a resident of Silver City, and I've come here to thank Councilor Ray. Thank you. The rewritten ordinance, the town street definition, much closer to the state rewrite definition, and you even went the extra step to say that ATVs wouldn't be driven within the town, and that the ROVs are explicitly forbidden on the trails, etc. And also in the operation equipment and safety requirements, down in that last paragraph 12, extended the motor vehicle traffic rules that you have to obey, and then included that golden statement, including but not limited to, so that people know they're just like any other motor vehicle then when they use the town streets. And I can see this, if this ordinance passes, as being a good template for, say, a front-back handout we can have at the visitor center, RV parks, things people can hand out so people understand the RVs, how they can be used here. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Garcia?
I'm Tony Garcia, and I'd just like to say thank you for listening to everything that's been brought up. Some of these people that just came up and talked have said pretty much what I wanted to say too, but I just want to say thank you. And one of the reasons that, like Councilor Ray talked about insurance. Most of these, they are all insured, and they all have pretty good lighting. So I'd like to thank you, and as far as insurance, it's on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Diana Arstola.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Arsola. I also have a self-business owner. We are the masters of our environment, and we can help manage it with way less emissions that are contributed to the greenhouse effect. Let's think of the air erosion that many of our different machines produce. Our responsibility is now for the future. We will drive in harmony with other traffic. We are surrounded by cities that allow OHVs. We are a negative black dot on the map. A bigger share of your constituents would hope for at least a two-year test plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Can't read the first name, but Hogan?
No comment right now, thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone who didn't sign up who wished to give some public input?
I am Shelby Hallmark, Silver City citizen. I spoke at Councilor Ray's public comments. I'll be very brief tonight. I appreciate the changes you made to take the trails out of the ordinance. That's really helpful, and the others as well. However, this ordinance has the potential to make substantial change to the character of Silver City. One of the things that many of us who have come here, and I think many of the people who grew up here, really value about this town is its natural, wonderful natural setting. Adding an influx of a new piece of equipment on our streets, it's not really meant for streets, will change the character of the town. So I think that in looking at the ordinance, we need to think long and hard about it before that big step is made. And I think the major reason that you need to think about it is which way is this going to impact economically on the town. It may bring in some RV users, ROV users. It may discourage other tourists or relocators or other people who may have other interest in what they're looking for in Silver City. So that's a balance that needs to be reviewed, and maybe there needs to be some study done about what the real impacts might be and what the economic cost benefit would be. Thank you very much.
In the very back. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sonia Ray. I am Councilor Ray's daughter, born and raised in Silver City. I still approve and I'm for this ordinance of the OHVs. It's just the quality of life that is changing. Sometimes some of us work 8, 12, 16 hours a day. We just want to come home, go for a ride in the fresh air. Sometimes that gives us the opportunity to do that. Just go for a ride and clear our thoughts and just breathe in the air, go see the sunset from the top of the mountain without having to actually take our vehicles up there. You can take a smaller vehicle, which allows you to put maybe 6 people in there. It'll be more serene. It'll bring in tourism. It'll bring in more business, the way I see it, because if it's approved, they'll have to change the tires, modify their OHVs, so it's going to bring in the income to our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Michael Malozzi again. Just a couple questions that I think the council should probably add to the list to consider. I think it's great the way that, I didn't see the previous version, but I think it's very comprehensive. Looks very safe. But other things to consider possibly would be, like the gentleman said, bringing in out-of-state RV users. They're now licensed from another state, don't necessarily have the same requirements that New Mexico has. And then if we have another added permitting on top of that, are they going to be prepared for that, and can they get that done in a visit? In regards to the time of use, there was mention to changing it throughout the year. Well, if you maybe adhere to a sunrise, sunset, that might help in alleviating some kind of, that's kind of what the Forest Service does. They're not allowed to use ROVs outside of those times. So during the winter, you'll have less time where the light is lower. Obviously, you can see where I'm going. The other concern that I would have is that the liability would seem to be on the user if they were to damage city property. Say a trail or a park, if it were to be damaged by an ROV through this, the allowance of using ROVs in town, if they were to get caught, yes, they would be probably held liable. But if they were not caught, the town would now have to go and repair whatever was damaged. It's just a concern. And making sure that we stay true to an intent, that we have an idea of what we're trying to accomplish, as opposed to just letting ROVs be used. If we are trying to connect recreational areas, then that would be the intent. Just make sure we have some kind of solid, concrete idea of what we want to accomplish here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other input? Yes, ma'am.
It's my boss.
My name is Olga Ray, and I'm Councilor Ray's wife. And I'd like to thank all of you for listening to him, and for him trying to pass this, and for all these people that have come to help give their input. I am for the NOI, and I hope you consider voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other input? Well, thank you all very much for that, and thank you for being here. I know that a lot of you had to leave family members and had to drive a ways to get here, but we really appreciate your participation in this very important process. Do I hear a motion? Councilor Ray?
Mr. Mayor, first of all, thank you guys, Mr. Timmy and the rest of you guys there that really hold a place here. We took it to heart, and I know we had some disagreements on it, but we tried to do the best that we could. And I hope that we did that. And with that, I make a motion to approve a superseding notice of intent ordinance number 1269, an ordinance amending section 12-7-9 through 12-7-9.10 off-highway motor vehicles definitions of the New Mexico Uniform Traffic Code adopted as the Silver City Traffic Code, as the Silver City Traffic Ordinance in Chapter 50, Section 50-1 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Silver City, New Mexico.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Mayor,
Councilor Kano?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Gordon.
A motion and second. Is there any discussion? Councilor Beston?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind folks that once again that we're at the NOI stage, and that if this does pass, then it goes out for public discussion and for all of you to let us know once again what you think. And I also wanted to mention that I appreciate the suggestion from Councilor Kano that Councilor Ray said about maybe adding a sunset clause, because right now I don't think there's much data anywhere. And I think that having a sunset clause allows the next council in 2 years, if we do add that, it will allow that council then to reconsider and have there be data about how this is working in town and if it's not working. And I think there's other considerations that have been brought up here that I think that we should, that I personally think we should open for discussion. So I just want to remind folks, this is just moving it to discussion. It is not moving it to final vote. So thank you.
Okay, Councilman Smith?
Thank you. I asked Councilor Ray sort of 5 major bullet point questions that really were important to me about the real intent, so I want to actually echo what one of the persons, Mr. Mazzola, gave us as what is the real reason for this. And I also really, really want to have us think about and address enforcement and the financial impact. So I just want to say that I still have a number of reservations, but I'm hoping to be able to see those worked on in the review period.
Thank you. Any other discussion? And I would like to make this a roll call, please.
Councilor Connor? Aye. Councilor Ray?
Aye.
Councilor Edison?
Aye.
Councilor Amos Smith?
In terms of moving this for discussion, I vote aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is 11C, the approval/disapproval of resolution number 2018-16, a resolution authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an amendment to a contract for employment between the town and Alex C. Brown. Are there any questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion? Councilor Bedison?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 2018-16, a resolution authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an amendment to a contract for employment between the town and Alex C. Brown.
Is there a second? Councilor Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion.
This will require a roll call. Please, Ann. Oh, do we have a second? Yeah.
No, I seconded, but discussion.
Oh, discussion. I'm sorry.
I just want to make the public aware that if they haven't read the resolution, which is on the agenda on the website, that there are parameters that have to be followed by the mayor. We're not just telling him to do what he wants. Okay, so I just want people to be aware of that, so that when the public starts with their chisme, because you know that's going to happen, that the mayor had a certain amount of parameters he had to follow. He can't just make a decision.
Okay, there's a clause in his contract that limits what the mayor can do. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other discussion?
No.
Okay, let's have a roll call then, please, Ann.
Councilor Edison?
Aye.
Councilor Amos Smith? Aye. Councilor Ray?
Aye.
Councilor Connor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. This concludes the business of the town of Silver City. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Smith.
this guy wants to make it. I move to adjourn.
I second it.
There's a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.